Namaste and good evening. I basically would like to consider myself as an apolitical person. But then long ago when I was in college, and I still distinctly remember my political science teacher saying that, if you live in a state, one can be away from politics, but politics, however, will not remain far away from you. And over the years, my experience have taught me exactly the same. But the present issue that has engulfed Nepal, I somehow say that it is even beyond politics. The border dispute between Nepal and India. On an optimistic note, I would prefer to call it as a misunderstanding on our neighbor's part. It's not even dispute. It's beyond politics because it has affected all of us. It has struck the raw emotional chord of every Nepali like myself, irrespective of our backgrounds, of our ethnicity, political affiliation, or religious belief for that matter. And after this incident, most Nepali feel that their pride has been scarred heavily, and the very foundation of being a citizen of an independent, sovereign nation has been, heavily shaken. And this, of course, as we can see from the development of the current situation, is absolutely unbearable and simply unacceptable. Because, you see, this is a nation shaped by the distinguished gallantry exhibited by our forefathers, with the support of Nepali people of all backgrounds, all ethnicity. And I do not say that, in our history and in the past, that we haven't displayed any weaknesses or compromises, but whatever sacrifices we have made in the past has been for one and only one reason, and that is to preserve and retain our independence and sovereignty. Therefore, the present landmass that we call Nepal has not been shaped without paying a price. Therefore, the territory of Nepal is something that the population of this nation, under no circumstances, are willing to compromise. And it's not a big deal because I'm sure India India not only understands this very clearly, but also highly identifies with this emotion, because India itself has gone through an arduous struggle against the heavy-handedness of its colonial powers. But we do not want to dwell on unnecessary braggadocio. Like we said, we in the past, in history, we've had our weaknesses. We have, our share of shortcomings. There was a phase of ignorance. There was a phase of, absent of political will amongst the political parties of the day, or the display of apathy by our political leaders of that time for some reasons. And, the more than sporadic political and social turmoil over the years that took place in this nation, of course, has not been of any help. And also, not to forget, the friendly cooperation that we have extended to our neighbors, taken undue advantage of. But then again, now the time has, of course, evolved, the time has changed, and the population of Nepal, especially the youth, is of course not that of 1816 or 1857 or 1923, or for that matter, not even 1950 or 1962. The way the current scenario that has developed, clearly establishes that the population of this country are not going to accept any form of injustices lying down. Therefore, this time around, it's not even enough to appease the incumbent government alone, because this issue has been so passionately embraced also by the people of Nepal, that unless they think that they have been dealt justly and fairly, I, sadly and regretfully have this intuition that this bone of contention between the two countries is going to persist. And this sort of, a deadlock between two neighboring nations who for such a long time in history have shared common values, common culture, tradition, religious belief to a large extent, is going to affect not only the two nations concerned, but also going to hamper the progress and rob the much needed peace in this region. Therefore, in recent news, when I hear that, when India cries wolf vehemently, denouncing China, not showing respect to the sovereignty of India, and proclaims how China does not care for India's national or territorial integrity, it just seems like a case of pot calling the kettle black. And and India, for no doubt, India today is being a powerful country, not only of this region, but also a force that is to be recognized and respected globally. Needs to project or show some kind of magnanimity befitting the stature of such a nation, especially when it comes to its friendly neighbors. But Nepal basically only wants fair deal based on fact and statistics. It is only demanding to have what truly belongs to her, not more, not less. Nepali people will always want cordial, lasting relations with India. Whenever Indian government had extended some warmth of friendship, Nepali people have always reciprocated with open heart. I recalled the very first visit of Honorable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, to Nepal as a Prime Minister. And the warmth and the fraternal affections and the goodwill was so infectious that Modi ji stepped out of his motorcade and went amongst the elated bystanders, to the bewilderment of 3 or 5 layers of security that was provided to him. The crowd not only spontaneously cheered and showered him with all kinds of praise, but treated him like a rock star. And to be honest, to be frank, I have yet to see that kind of reception meted out to our own leaders so spontaneously and voluntarily by the crowd of Nepal. But then again, unfortunately, the exhilaration met with an untimely death when Prime Minister Modi's government imposed trade blockade during the aftermath of 2015 devastating earthquake. This has left a deep wound, at least to this generation of Nepali people. Therefore, time and again, this untimely blockades and with lopsided treaties and agreements and unresolved border disputes and not to mention taking advantage of the weakness of our political leaders, has a repercussion of which, befalls this nation and its people. Therefore, the current step that India has taken vis-a-vis Limpiyadhura and Lipulekh has in some way come as the last straw on the camel's back. It is not at all in the benefit of not only the two concerned nations, but also for the entire SAARC region, to say the least. It definitely not conducive for a nation like India that's marching ahead with global ambition, to have more than its share of neighbors that it has a hostile, relationship with. And the hostility looming in the air need not to persist, because anger and malice is going to take us nowhere. The consequence, of course, is going to be far more damaging for both the countries. And at this time of global crisis, in a pandemic like this, where the whole world is suffering, India, being a powerful country in the region, needs to respond to the need of their less fortunate neighbors. And this kind of action will only raise the level of India in the international arena to the next level. And as one Indian politician, a seasoned Indian politician, rightly foresees, India as a development power, and its rise is being linked to its ability to provide governance solution to the development needs to countries in Asia and Africa. Also, just recently I was fortunate enough to hear the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi's address to his nation. I think it was on the occasion of Buddha Jayanti, and he said something like, I would like to roughly quote what he said. He said, we should always work with a sense of service only. When there is compassion, sympathy, then these feelings make us so strong that one can overcome the biggest challenge. So we here in Nepal only wish that Mr. Modi would overcome this challenge, not just with compassion and sympathy. Of course, we need that, but with all fairness and a good dose of empathy. Because we here in Nepal take the border, like I said, misunderstanding on an optimistic note, on the Indian part, with great deal of regret, and ask to return what is justly belongs to Nepal. All the historical evidence clearly points out, proves that Limpiyadhura and Lipulekh region is in all fairness part of Nepal. Therefore, as a country, as a nation, as the people of this country, we are just humbly requesting our friendly neighbor to look into the facts of the history, the statistics, and deal this matter with all fairness and justice, amicably, through cordial diplomatic channels, because this kind of antagonistic atmosphere in this region is not not only not good for both the nations concerned, but for this entire region as well. I'm sure, despite few ups and downs and challenging moments here and there, basically India and Nepal share a relationship that is probably unmatched anywhere else in the world. And this challenge that we're facing at the moment right now, India will deal very fairly and justly and come out with a solution that appeases the Nepali population and makes them feel that they have been dealt justly. Thank you.